Hey, we're back with another segment of the Hacking Your Mind 4-part series. This is the part 2 review.
This is from PBS, remember?
Yes, from the PBS series Hacking Your Mind from 2020.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put a link in the down below,
Yeah.
and there'll be some extra information hopefully. But this one is continuing on a little bit from the last one, and it's talking about how our cognitive biases can be used to influence us without us even realizing it. And they review. When I say review, Michael Lewis was interviewed in the first one.
He did Moneyball, remember?
He wrote Moneyball,
Right.
and then he wrote so that's the story. So he wrote Moneyball, and part of what he realized or recognized from Moneyball is that all these baseball scouts were picking and recommending players based on things like whether their girlfriend was pretty or not, instead of how well they hit the ball. And it was like he said, we've got, baseball's been going on 100 years.
Yeah.
We've got all this data. I mean, it's really well measured. You've got statistics about baseball that you don't have in most
Businesses.
corporate employees don't have,
right.
to be able to measure their performance. And yet it was, they were ignoring that in favor of silly stuff. And so
scary.
This was examples of biases, and it didn't go into the specifics of which cognitive biases there was in that particular piece of it. But anyway, so then somebody wrote a review, and one of the guys that wrote the review is actually a Nobel Prize winner, and said, oh, by the way, there's no surprise here in what he found in Moneyball, because it's based on, it's just validating the work that was done by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in their work back in the 70s.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this guy was totally blown away. Because he thought, I was good.
Yeah, and so he actually went and found Daniel Kahneman and ended up writing a book about he and Tversky, and that was mentioned in the previous episode. Yeah. This episode they interviewed or referred, I believe that they interviewed four different Nobel Prize winners that all their work was all around some sort of cognitive bias or misjudgment that we have.
The misjudgment was the main part.
And that's the thing. What cognitive biases are, to review, is a systematic error that we make. Systematic meaning we don't even know we're doing it.
Right.
But it's very consistent.
Yep.
And the fact that it's so consistent makes us
stupid.
No. Not stupid. Predictable.
All right.
I mean,
all right. Which comes into how we're being preyed on.
Yeah, manipulated
by advertisements.
They used the word influenced, but
I use the word prey. Okay.
But I mean, marketing of all types is using these cognitive biases to influence our choices.
Right.
And so I just wanted to quickly mention the 4 Nobel Prize winners were Daniel Kahneman, which he was covered in the last one. Richard Thaler, he was a behavioral economist, or he helped invent the science of behavioral economics. And then Robert Schiller and George Akerlof, who both together wrote a book called Fishing, spelled with a PH, Fishing for Fools, spelled with a PH. And that was a really cool thing that they did in this episode. They talked about, fish. For most of the evolutionary history of fish, for millions of years, when they saw something shiny and wiggly in the water, and they went and they bit it, they got some food, and they were happy. They survived. And relative, in terms of the million years of history, there's only been fishermen throwing bait attached to a hook for a short amount of time, right? But it's not working out well for the fish.
Still, yeah.
Because they're biased to go and swallow something that looks a certain way, and we figured out how to hook them. And so, he was drawing a parallel between that and how we get fooled by our own cognitive biases, being used against us.
Yeah, and it's scary. It really is.
So that was a big one of some of these economists, their contribution was the recognition. I guess it was Mr. Thaler, was the recognition that all of the the study of economics made this big assumption that we were rational and that we made rational decisions, and that the market, as a whole, like thousands and thousands of people, that if one person did something stupid, like or against their best interest, let's say, sold their house for way too little, then somebody else sold their house for way too much, and it all averaged out, and so it was very consistently, it was trustable. The system was trustable, and he basically said, "Oh no," he figured out not even close. And there's a section in this episode talking about the loans, the subprime loans back in the mid 2008 period. So that's worth watching.
Yeah.
Another thing they talked about, one of the cognitive biases, is the loss aversion bias.
That was another one that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I had heard around this. I knew about this one then, but the idea that if somebody gives you $100, it feels good, right? So, oh, that's nice. I just got $100. But if you were to lose that same $100, the bad feeling of the pain of losing it is double what the good feeling was. And so we're wired to avoid losses, and we exaggerate the likelihood of loss because of that loss aversion.
Yeah.
So
we found that with day trading, didn't we? Yeah.
Trading for sure, stimulates this, that fear of loss, and the talking heads on TV, and anyway. When the market's going down, people get scared, real scared. Mm-hmm. So that's but this he used the example of extended warranties.
Oh yeah. That was really fascinating.
Basically, he said, they're like the worst bet you could make. Yeah. And he said they used an example. They used a little clip out of The Simpsons, and Homer Simpson. You got to watch it. It's very cool. Yeah, but his takeaway was an entire career of work has been reduced to a one-line, punchline in The Simpsons.
You got to watch it. It is a scream.
So
scream and scary.
The Kahneman, his book was Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and that fast thinking system, we couldn't function with that. We couldn't live with that. If we had to slowly and deliberately think about everything we did, we wouldn't have survived. So we have to have this system. It's not that we can completely eliminate it, but the more we understand where our biases are and that we're biased, the more we can, at the right times, at key times, like when we're getting ready to buy a car or buy a house, where there's a big risk, we can slow down and remember that we're misperceiving risk in somehow.
Right.
And so many of our decisions are this, based on how we feel. They're a quick decision. And he used the example of having a monkey sitting on your shoulder.
Yeah, that was kind
and the monkey doesn't care.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Monkey doesn't care what. The monkey doesn't care that you want Haagen-Dazs, and monkey doesn't care.
Monkey wants Haagen-Dazs. He doesn't care if you want to be healthy or not.
That's true.
That was
That was the deal.
And so, and then there was some. They talked about habits. How we get. For example, they market snack foods at a time, especially around the football games, because we form a habit of sitting in front of the TV watching the football games and chugging snacks.
Exactly.
And so they want to advertise those to us at the time when it can reinforce that habit. Mm-hmm. And then they interviewed a guy named Robert Cialdini, who's very well known for I think he's at Arizona State University, but he wrote a book called Persuasion. Cialdini is Cialdini. I'll put a link in. And his book on persuasion is again used by a lot of marketers.
Right.
But he was actually brought in to work on some political campaigns.
Oh, that's another scary.
There's another guy they mentioned. I'll put in link. Tim Wu. He wrote a book called The Attention Merchants, and I hadn't seen that one. So I haven't read it. Don't know much about it. But the rest of the episode, which is about almost half, 20 minutes of it, was about how all these same marketing techniques that are used in the marketplace all the time are now being used by political campaigns to influence our decisions. And the thing is, kind of like the the fish being at a disadvantage with all the artificial lures. We're now at a disadvantage with the amount of information about us that can be collected and aggregated by all the social media sites and the data merchants. That they can build a very, very detailed profile about individuals and then show them, use another bias called a confirmation bias. And the confirmation bias is basically when we see something that agrees with what we already believe, we find that more acceptable. We give that more weight. We treat it as true because it agrees with us versus something that disagrees a little bit.
Well, we found that on the last series, or that last episode with the little kids with the colors of the jersey.
Yes. If they were wearing an orange, they let them pick a shirt, and then they showed them pictures of kids with the different colors.
And the same exact kid, only different colors.
And they were more likely to be like them, and if they were in the same color, they were going to be nice to them, and they were going to like them, and all that.
And the other person.
I think there might be even another bias there, but the confirmation bias, for sure, is used, and so the way the way they explain how it's used in the political arena to show us, to target us with ads that the content of the ad agrees with what they already know we believe. And so even though we think we're in this marketplace and we're all seeing the same stuff, we're not.
Yeah.
And so it increases the division between us artificially and intentionally, and it's
we can't used against us.
We have to be careful how because of the climate of charged conversations, we can't really talk about that.
Right,
but
so
definitely
you need to watch it.
Definitely watch the episode,
and we'd love to have your feedback from it, because this was one of those ones that hits you kind of in your sternum, going,
and it gets stronger.
Scary.
There's another one of the episodes goes much deeper into the actual divisions and the violence that came out of it, and how we're that this is evoked to some degree intentionally, and it's so that's. We'll see. After we watch that one, we'll see what we can say about it and what we can't. But we're going to still recommend
watching it,
all 4 parts.
But you need to watch it for your own edification and for your own seeing how it affects you, and because we can tell you all day long how it affects us.
Yeah,
it's how it affects you. That's the main thing on this.
Don't take our word for it. Check it out for yourself.
Exactly.
So we'll put a link and make it easy for you to get to. Cool. So thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.